Hi, this is lesson number 7, and in this series of literary criticism, we are talking about Aristotle. So far, we have discussed in the previous two lessons, about Aristotle's life and some of the key concepts. And now, moving further, where we left in the last lesson, uh, we were talking about poetry. So we are beginning from there, and in poetry, okay, first we just repeat that poetry, Aristotle says that it is imaginative recreation. We have to understand this. Earlier, Plato was saying only that it is imitation, and he says that it is creative imitation. That's all. Whatever the examples you may take, even like you have experienced something in the past, and today you are writing about that in the form of a poetry. What is this? You are just creating, you are just recreating the whole event or a whole thing what you have experienced in the past. That is recreation or creative imagination, whatever you may call it now. So then further he classifies poetry in three divisions. Then the first one is that in poetry there is imitation of superiors. So in superiors he counts the greats like the kings, the great people in the history, the gods and the saints. Then again further in the next division he says about poetry is the imitation of inferiors. When he talk about inferiors, then we go just opposite, not the greats but the bad ones like the villains or the devils. And then the third he says that imitation of similars. So in similars he's expecting us to think about between these two extremes, the greats and the bad ones, and between them something that is the common people are. So on that imitations of similar, he hasn't said so much as he has talked about superiors and inferiors. Then further we have two concepts. The first one is poetry, and the form of poetry is another, that is epic poetry, the longer, the big, the larger poems we see in literature, like the one Paradise Lost, very famous example, epic poetry. And then another concept is about tragedy. And tragedy is something like drama, you can say. In fact he takes tragedy and drama in the same category. So we have two categories, epic poetry and tragedy. And what Aristotle says, that there is not much to choose, both are of a high class, both are superior things. If a writer wants to write something, he should go for epic poetry or tragedy. These are means the great fields in the field in writing. A writer, if you want to be a good writer, then you should write either epic poetry or tragedies. And then he says that satires and comedies are not that great things. So he considered them as inferiors. Epic poetry and tragedy he counts in superiors, and the satires and comedies in inferiors. And further he connects them that like epic poetry or drama, in superiors we have kings and gods, as I earlier mentioned. And when satires and comedies about, then it is about inferiors like uh, devils, villains, the bad ones. So this is the classification made by him. First, in the division like superior and inferior, and then epic poetry and tragedy, that is in the category of superiors, and then satires and comedies in the category of inferiors. And going further, one thing I would like to remind you, or you have to bear in mind, that we are talking about the period that is 2000 years or more, that is 2000 years before, and at that time there was no prose work at all. Whatever the people used to see or repeat or sing, that was only poetry. So whatever the form we have, whether it is tragedy, drama or epic poetry, these were only in the form of poetry. मीन्स लोग गा के ही सुनाते थे, चाहे वो अगर कोई ट्रेजेडी है तो उसको भी रिदमिक लाइंस में गा कर ही सुनाते थे. सो एवरीथिंग फॉल्स अंडर द कैटेगरी ऑफ पोइट्री. आप कॉमेडी को इस तरीके से ना देखें दैट कॉमेडी लाइक दीज वी सी इन द प्रोज वर्क. It is not like prose. So in the category of poetry, because everything was in the form of poems, so in poems there are further categories like epic poetry and tragedies and satires and comedies. So this way we have to look at these things. So prose work wasn't there. This is the thing we have to bear in mind. Now going further, epic poetry and tragedy. What is the difference between these two? Now we shall discuss about these 2 points. Epic poetry is a long narrative poem in which we are just facing or we are just listening to a narration recited by a person. Everything, the whole incident, whatever happened is narrated to us. That is epic poetry or long narrative poems or poetry, whatever you call. And then in comparison, what is tragedy? Tragedy is something that is performed by actions. The earlier one, as I told you, that in epic poetry everything is just narrated, but in tragedy it is performed by the actors, by the actions. So this is the major difference between these 2 forms of poetry. Further, he says about a tragedy that it is a serious action of certain gravity or weightage. Means action has to be serious. The first thing means action means plot, you can say, the concept, the storyline, it has to be of seriousness. Secondly, there has to be language of harmony, rhythm, and songs has to be there. So it is performed with the language of harmony, rhythm, and songs. So dialogues, not the proper dialogues as we have in the form of sentences, in the form of songs, as we have in most of the old works of William Shakespeare. If you go to the original text, you will find that these dialogues are in the form of poetry or in the form of rhythms. This is what he meant to say by for tragedy, that it is performed with actions, and certainly it should have a serious action of a certain gravity. Then it is performed by actors, and it should have the language of harmony, rhythm. And then he says that there are 6 constituent or 6 elements of a tragedy. What are these 6 elements of a tragedy? Plot. We all know what is plot. The storyline or the main basic जो कहानी है, that is plot. Character, about whom the main central figure. And diction is the writing style, how it is written with the language. It is related to somewhat language is the style. And then we have spectacle and song. What is spectacle? Spectacle is about the postures, costumes, and decorative things, and how tragedy is performed on the stage. The things which appear on the stage, which makes the reader, not the reader, I would say, make the audience feel the atmosphere. That is about the spectacle. Then thought about is the theme of the story or the plot. What message a writer wants to give to the audience, that is thought. And one more is there, that is song. Song or music is also the part of a tragedy or the major element of the tragedy, that it makes the audience feel what is happening. It makes the audience feel the situation, rhythm and music, whatever we see in the movies, it makes us feel the situation. That is also the integral part of a tragedy. But here there is one more point, that Aristotle says that these six elements, out of these six elements, four are to be there in epic poetry. So we have four common points in epic poetry and tragedy. Which are those? Plot. Plot has to be there in the both, in epic poetry and in tragedy. Plot, then character, then diction, means writing style, and then the thought. What is the message? But two things which are not there in epic poetry, according to Aristotle. These are spectacles, means what is the look, or what is the postures, or how you can say the costumes, which are, what are the things we experience on the stage when the actions performed by the actors, the things that appear on the stage, the outer things. And then the songs, means rhythm and music, that is okay, somewhat which is not so clear, that whether it is the same rhythm and music which is there in the poetry, but it is mentioned that the spectacle and songs are not there in epic poetry. And then we go to these elements in a bit detail now. The first, that is plot. What is plot? For plot, he says that it is the soul of the tragedy. Tragedy, we have a drama or whatever. Plot is the main thing. You go to see a movie or you go to watch a play. Main thing is the plot. If you are satisfied with the plot, or you are thrilled with the plot, then I think most of the you can say your satisfaction is done. So same thing is here. He says that plot has to be a complete. First, completeness has to be there. It should have a proper beginning, proper middle, and proper end. It is must. There shouldn't be anything that action started and didn't happen further, and it was still remained means unfinished, and the story get finished, but that action didn't finished. It shouldn't be like that. Whatever the action starts, it should go, and it should have a proper beginning, proper middle, and proper end. You may have watched so many movies, and you can analyze this aspect on the basis of on the basis of this. You can analyze these movies, because these days we don't have so many plays, or we do not come across them, especially their performances. And we see movies, and according to this we can analyze so many movies whether their plot is proper or not. This is very good thing if you go deep into this, that plot has a significant role to play. Second, he says that in plot, change in the fortunes. So the fortunes of the main character should change. Either they should change from good to bad or bad to good, but they should change. Again, I would say that you should imagine this concept of the fortune changes by keeping a picture or a movie in your mind. You just see whether that movie or particular one satisfy this or not. And this is said there, that fortunes of the character should change. And then he says that magnitude, it should have a decent length. Length has to be there, proper length. It shouldn't be very long, it shouldn't be so small. A proper length has to be there in the plot. And so that, because Aristotle says that if the plot is so long, and you are, as an audience, you are watching that, and you won't be able to remember everything. It shouldn't be like that. And it shouldn't be like that, that it should finish in few minutes. There should be a proper length. Shouldn't be very long, shouldn't be so small. And then he comes to another key concept, that is unity. You might have heard this also, unity, three unities suggested by Aristotle. There are three unities suggested by him. These unities should be there around that common theme. What is the theme of the plot? According to that, these three unities has to be there. The unity of time, unity of action, and unity of place. Unity of time means the plot or the action of the plot should be in real time duration, almost like a real time duration. It should not go to the ages, years, centuries, not like that. It should be like even he says, according to Aristotle, it should be around 24 hours a clock, enough, nothing more than that. 24 hours. But okay, we can't expect any storyline to be just finished within 24 hours of the actions. Means the storyline the storyline of the action shouldn't be finished within 24 hours. Do you expect this? So many movies you watch or so many plays you see, somewhere you may have find it, but according to Aristotle, this is very strict rule that action should be just around the single turn of the clock. Here it means by that 24 hours enough. And then next is the unity of action. Unity of action means that it should be centered around one person, main character, and every action should have a logical sequence. There shouldn't be subplot. He says that there should not be subplots. Sometimes the writer used to involve some subplots just to kill the time or just to occupy the space. That if he feels that a plot is so short that there should be some subplot, Aristotle strictly says that shouldn't be subplots. Only the main plot has to be there. Especially in so many tragedies or movies, tragic movies, you see that there is a comic subplot. Sometimes it gives a relief to the audience, but somewhere it also proves something that creating disturbance to the main plot. And the third one is the unity of the place. So action should be restricted to one place. One place mean to say like one particular place or one city, but it shouldn't go beyond the boundaries of the countries or to even different continents. So this is what Aristotle wanted to tell us, that there should be three unities properly followed by a writer. If he wants to be a good tragedy writer, that there should be unity of time, then unity of action, and then unity of place. So further, what I think this is going into the 20 minutes, yes, now. So I think that we shall discuss more things in the next lesson. What are the things remaining about the structure of the plot and some of the other elements, character, diction, thought, we shall discuss in the next lesson. Thanks.